We also really need to talk about the flaws of the consent framework. Just because someone consents to something doesn't necessarily mean it's good. What if someone has a cannibalism fetish and consents to being killed and eaten? Should they be allowed to do it? And should that be okay just because they consented to it? And yes, that is a real story, by the way. This actually happened.
Armin Mivers is a cannibal. In March 2001, he killed a man and ate him, along with a glass of fine red wine. A crime so bizarre
how does she say that with a straight face?
And mystified the world. You see, Mivers' victim was a willing accomplice. He actually wanted to be eaten. A rare case of what they call love cannibalism.
Let's not draw any conclusions just yet. Let's think about this, right? So here we have a willing, consenting participant who, for all we know, ever since he was a child, he wanted to be eaten and digested and shat out.
Hello my dears, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking about consent. No, this is not your sex ed class. I want to be talking about the sexual revolution and how it's changed the way we talk about consent as well as sexual experiences, etc. So let's get into how we got here. Decades ago, the Western world abandoned its historically Christian views on sexual morality and instead embraced the liberal feminist sex-positive philosophy as its new ethos. We threw out our old understandings of sexual norms and decided that consent was all that matters. Along the way, we threw out old vocabulary like chivalry and gentlemanly behavior because the liberal feminists made it clear that these words were outdated and sometimes demeaning because women should be treated just like men.
How is that
yes,
demeaning?
Ladies, you can open your own door and you can pull out your own chair. You can't seem to pay for your own meal though. That seems to be where people draw the line.
Boom.
Equality, but not that kind of equality. You're not a maniac. The new sex-positive ethos was able to be set into motion because of new technological advancements such as the contraceptive pill. The pill allowed women better control over their fertility, and with this biological restraint now removed from women, it made it more easy for them to level out the playing field and to pursue sex like men. And so they did. Casual sex became more normalized and the stigma that was once held around it began to fade. Only there was one key problem that the liberal feminists did not account for, and that was the psychological differences between men and women and the differences between male and female sexuality. The sexual revolution was supposed to create a fun, utopian world where sex could just be a fun leisure activity, but it did unfortunately run into some problems along the way. However, for the playboys, this new world was a dream come true for them. The men who had multiple options and wanted to have limitless sex without having to commit to any women, this new world was brilliant, and this was the world they were able to thrive in.
This is how backwards it is today. Way back when, it used to be the 3-date rule, and then a man and a woman can entertain the idea of having sex with each other, right? That was appropriate. That was like the societal norm. That was universal. Everyone knew what was going down after date 3 or 4. Today, it's, wait a minute. Ho. You want to go on a date? You want to go out? I at least have to hook up with you 3 times for me to determine if that's something I see myself with you. Slow down. I'm definitely in that camp. Jesus. The priorities have flipped, you know, sex was important to us as men. Sex was important to us to a point where, and this still applies today, that women are the gatekeepers of sex. But back then, if you said like, oh, you don't get to have a piece of me until I know that you know how to treat me like a lady, and you at least cross off the boxes. Okay, you can protect and provide for me. That was it. And men were willing to be gentlemen. Men were willing to court you. And then today, it's like, if it's that easy, why would I have to prioritize your needs?
And this is why you'll find figures like Hugh Hefner played their part in helping to push the sexual revolution.
One of the points, I know that in a little while we're going to be talking with some feminists here tonight. I think that sexual emancipation and female emancipation work hand in hand, and that the sexual revolution that's taken place here is one of the greatest boons to female emancipation, because the women have the most to gain. It's women that have really had that really second-class citizenship role at best, and that at least really have been an object, and paid dearly for it in the centuries past.
Within
Yo,
this new
wolf in
culture,
sheep's
men and women are
clothing.
socialized to believe that there are no differences between them sexually. Men are taught that women are equally as up for it as they are, and that women enjoy sex in the same way that men do. And yes, women love sex, but not exactly in the same way that men do. It seems that even sex-positive feminists started to realize that on average, women were not quite having the same feelings about casual sex as men, and articles started to pop up to help them get through it.
Hold on, before she gets into that, I can't imagine being a Gen Z. You Zoomers got it so bad. First of all, with Gen Zs, y'all don't know y'all don't know how to talk to women because everything is done online. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is you're also being taught that it's super easy. All you have to do is put an effort. So one, y'all don't know how to talk to women. And then two, I think you guys are just as nervous because it's right there in your face and you don't know what to do about it.
4 tips for hooking up without catching feelings, according to a relationship counselor. 12 ways to not fall for a guy you're casually hooking up with. How to navigate casual sex and feelings, according to sex experts. The reality is, women are far more likely to develop an attachment to someone they're sleeping with regularly, even if they're not in a committed relationship. They also have a much lower threshold for sexual disgust, or they're much more likely to get the ick, as the kids are saying. This new sex-positive ethos also completely ignores the biological differences between men and women, which isn't too surprising because liberal feminists do have a habit of ignoring biology because it often conflicts with their goals. Because men have much higher levels of testosterone, they typically have much higher sex drives. On average, women tend to be a lot more agreeable than men, which means it's a lot easier to pressure them into doing things that they don't want to do. Now pair that with the fact that on average, women also tend to be a lot smaller and also physically weaker than men, and this combination can lead to some tricky situations. This has led to multiple instances of women saying that they felt pressured into doing sexual things that they didn't want to do, either because they felt pressure from the person they were sleeping with, or they felt pressure to conform to our sex-positive culture.
She mentions that women, when they're about to have sex and they're debating on doing it, 2 things run through their mind, and it's either like, I don't want to do it, but I kind of feel pressured to do it. I don't want to say no. I don't know what could happen to me. Okay, I get that. But another thing that I don't think a lot of people really take into consideration is the culture around it, right? If she's debating on sleeping with a man, her thought process could be, well, everybody's doing it. My friends don't seem to make a big deal out of it, so I might as well do it too. Like, they seem fine.
With people sharing interesting takes like this on social media. And this perspective has led to...
I've had consensual sex and regretted it later. I thought I wanted to do it, made a mistake. Someone replies, if you regret it, then you didn't consent 100%, and that is grape. If you regret it, what do you mean regret it? There's some girls I've regretted being with. Did I get grapes? Lord knows, I've made some bad mistakes, but that's on me, right? It's on me. It's my responsibility to just take it up. Just to walk it off.
As well as discussions like this.
Ava, your point about, if men were that alpha, then they wouldn't be that bothered by this, doesn't really help us when it comes to boys growing up. And that is one of my worries, that for teenage boys now, they are so terrified of the consequences of putting a foot out of line. It's hard enough being a young teenager, working out how things are, working out how to do dating and all of that, without the terror that if you touch in the wrong place at the wrong time, you may find that your whole life is destroyed.
See, I
and
like
there is
that
far
terror.
too much. Well,
I like that.
As a mother of a teenage boy, I don't like that terror.
I do.
Interesting I've ever heard.
That is
I think that
awful.
men should be frightened.
I think
to
you'd
touch
feel
women in a way
differently
that
if you
they're
were,
not comfortable with.
But we're talking about
Yeah, but we're not
teenage
talking
years,
about. We're
children.
not talking about.
We're talking
but
about
it's an
young
interesting
children.
thing that you see. I would say that attitude actually is part of the problem too.
It is.
That's to me toxic femininity.
It
That
is.
is saying you should all be terrified, you men, if you put one.
Assaulting.
Well, I think we
Assaulting.
understand what sexual
What is
assault
an
is.
assault?
What Isabel's talking about is that young teenage clumsiness
really
in many
hard.
cases, which is now being recategorized as assault. Is that a problem?
It's not being recategorized as assault. It's always been assault. It's just we're finally talking about
I don't agree
it.
with that.
That's
But to-
ridiculous.
Teenage boy fumbling with
touch
teenage
on the
girl.
knee.
It's not in most.
The dude in high school who just wants the experience of what it's like to have a girlfriend is afraid to even talk to one, to maybe give her a hug goodbye. That's a big deal to a teenager. I remember when a girl hugged me goodbye my freshman year in high school. That's never happened. That has never happened to me before. Who wasn't family. I was shook. I I would race her to the door just to wish her goodbye after that in that class. But it was so innocent. It's so innocent. I had no thoughts. Nothing else has happened to me before. I just wanted like a hug. Like it was sweet. It was innocent. It was embarrassing.
Teenage boy fumbling with teenage girl is not
Not
it's
even
not in
that.
most cases assault, is
Do
it?
you remember Aziz Ansari, right? Half the heels of Me Too, half the heels of Harvey Weinstein, rightly being dragged through the courts and should have got way worse than just prison time, in my opinion. Aziz Ansari had a consensual relationship with a woman. She felt a bit awkward, and afterwards rescinded consent, and he was lumped in, and he had his
No, I'm
career
with you on that
after
one.
cancer.
I'm with
So then
you.
why should men be afraid of that?
Because he didn't touch her without consent, did he?
No, but she
But
rescinded his consent, and
how are
she
young
saw
boys
that then
supposed to navigate
something.
this, the whole
Yeah, I
thing?
agree.
I'm thinking
Well, you
of
need
my
to have-
teenage son. You know, he's 14, 15. What's he supposed to say? Would you mind if I put
Isabel,
my
you are an
hand- I mean,
extremely
come
strong
on,
woman. I
come
know
on.
in your house you're teaching them the difference between assault and then
Of
coming on
course,
to
of course.
someone. I know you are.
But what we're talking about is it's been very interesting watching the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, how it's all developed. Because a lot of very bad people, Harvey Weinstein and others, got their due comeuppance. We can all agree with that.
Yeah.
This is not even something to be debated. We're really talking about the grey line, right? Where is that grey line? How do you navigate it? When you're an experienced adult and you've been around the block in many ways, you can navigate that much more intelligently and with emotional intelligence than you can if you're a teenage boy. And I think the point
You need
Isabel
the
makes is good.
practice.
I've had three
You
sons
need the
in their 20s.
experience points.
I've always taught them to be respectful to women. I believe they are. But I do think it's really hard for a 16, 17-year-old boy now in this environment to know even how to start
They are all
having kind of some
terrified.
kind of physical relationship with a woman.
And so this takes us to the issue of allegations. There are some men who think that there are women who go out of their way to maliciously make up allegations in order to ruin men's lives. And I'm not going to deny that women like that absolutely do exist. There are a minority of women who are definitely vindictive enough to do things like that, and we've seen examples of them.
With that, I pray to God. I pray to God. God, oof, oh my God. When I make it, I don't want no woman coming out the woodwork saying, oh, he did X, Y, and Z to me. He's terrible. He belongs in prison. God, you know. And as I'm saying this, I'm sure a bunch of people are hitting that subscribe button right now because and sharing this video, all because you all probably see what my comeuppance, right? So I'm sure you're doing it right now because or else why would you make it this far without that.
And since post-revolution, because we threw out all of our old sexual norms and we also threw out all of the old vocabulary, people no longer have the words to describe the things that happen in the grey area. And this is especially a problem in a sex-positive society where people are having casual sex, because oftentimes people are having sex with people who they don't know very well. And
Sexual
because they don't
assault's
know
used
each
so
other very well, they may
loosely
not know
today.
what the person does or doesn't like, or what the person is and isn't comfortable with. And this is especially a problem because the reality is when people have sex, they don't announce everything they're going to do to the person before they do it. Can you imagine if they did that? I'm going to relocate you into a different sex position now. I shall be commencing this maneuver in
Go
3,
ahead.
2, 1. So
Please.
since that isn't how your normal average person has sex, often what's happening is people are having sex with people who they don't really know that well. And so they're doing certain things that they don't know are going to be received negatively. Often what these women are experiencing is regret over certain decisions they made, or they may be experiencing distress over the fact that they ignored their instincts during these sexual interactions. And when it all goes wrong and they start to experience emotional turmoil over the sexual experience, sometimes the person who gets the brunt of the blame is the person who was in the room with them, the man. The same man who's also been socialized to believe that she's just like him. She's just as up for it as he is. She's just as eager, because women love sex the same way men do. Because after all, the sex-positive liberal feminists told him that we can have sex just like the boys. It's always fascinating to me how men and women can recall the exact same incident in two very different ways.
There have been moments. And guys, you know this is true. There have been moments when you're about to get intimate with a girl, but they're not. They say, yeah, let's do it, but their actions, you don't know whether they're just nervous or shy or they don't really want to do it. And with that, fellas, I tell you, don't even have sex. Just postpone it. But yeah, we're gonna have to divide the blame, right? Because people who get canceled, the guys who get canceled after something like this gets out, like, oh, he did X. There's an alleged victim. He gets so much flack for it, and we live in a country where it's innocent until proven guilty. And this dude, this guy could, like, let's take Johnny Depp, like all these companies, these agencies, all the rapport he's built with all these different studios, these movie studios. they broke up with him. They said, we can't be associated with you," and it all turns out that he was the victim this entire time, right? We don't give girls nothing. We don't believe in innocent until proven guilty anymore, and that's a shame.